this the year that Bradford City get promoted back to League One? That's right, as the Bantams closing to just 1 point for top spot right now, heading into a busy weekend over in League Two. Can they take advantage this weekend? We're going to get into that and much more next. That's right, folks, back once again with another prediction video. Today is all about Matchday number 39, that's right, over in League 2. And we'll get to it in a second. Of course, if you knew where you've been, smash your subscribe button, subscribe for League 2, Lappin Rovers, Wolf Football. We're going to all here under one rooski, that's right. Walsall currently still lead the charts with just 1 point difference to that of Bradford. Meanwhile, of course, the Bantams are in second place with the Dons, that's right, the real deal Dons currently in third. But that could all change this weekend, and we'll get into all of that in a minute. Big shout out to the members. And a big shout out to the patrons, you know who you are. So what we're going to do now, though, is revisit those last round of games and, of course, kick on forward to this weekend's drama. So sit tight, hold on, let's get into it. Alrighty then, folks, let's turn the clock back to this past weekend and have a look at what went on over in League 2. So, of course, these were the results and these were my predictions. Of course, my predictions on the left, the real deal was on the right. So let's have a look at them. Of course, Notts County with a 0-0 draw against Crewe. Of course, denting both teams' hopes there for automatics or playoffs. Of course, I went with a 2-0 home win. Wimbledon and Barrow duked it out to a 2-2 draw, again denting Wimbledon's promotion hopes at the time of asking. Bradford with a big 4-1 win over Colchester. Colchester were flying high, or at least flying in form, but succumbed to Bradford on this one. Carlisle with a very important 2-1 win over Bromley. I went with a 1-0 win. MK Dons picking up a win on the road against Cheltenham. Chesterfield did only draw with Harrogate, as could Gillingham, and Walsall 0-0 in the end. Actually, 3 0-0s on the spin there. Fleetwood Town 0 and Tranmere 0. Meanwhile, Grimsby with a 1-0 win over Newport County. They're back into the playoffs. Port Vale with a 1-0 win over Morecambe, who looked destined to be going down, and Swindon 0 and Accrington Stanley 0. Meanwhile, Salford against Doncaster did not take place, of course, with all that kind of international stuff going on. I'm sure that was a factor in it. This is the table as of right here, right now. It is Walsall, it is Bradford, and it is Wimbledon going up at that moment. But goal difference separates Wimbledon and Port Vale. But, of course, the likes of Notts County could get into the top 3 this weekend, depending on what goes on elsewhere. Going down, it is Carlisle, it is Morecambe. 7 points the difference between Tranmere and Carlisle. Now, this, of course, there is a lot of matches still to be played, of course, to define who's going up, who's going down. There's also a lot of matches for the Prediction League, and I did say I'll get it back to you on this one, but I'm going to need 1 more week because it's just been helter-skelter. I've just got back, just sat back down on the seat here, so we're going to need the time to play catch-up. Just keep doing your thing. The forms will be there, and, of course, these games are on that form right here, right now, so we're going to get into it. But before that, one more slight thing I've got to talk about, and that is, of course, there are a couple of other games going on this week, and those are 2 of them on Tuesday, March the 25th. Of course, Port Vale against Barrow. I'm expecting Port Vale to win that game to get themselves back in the thick of things. And Carlisle against MK Dons. MK Dons currently on the lookout for a new manager, I believe. Some big names touted around as well. I'm expecting Carlisle to deliver the goods on that one to give themselves a boost and maybe, just maybe, put their Great Escape back on track. So let's kick it on forward then to this weekend's drama, all kicking off on Friday the 28th of March, and we have a double header. 2 games on Friday, Colchester against Grimsby. That's going to kick us all off on this match day, of course, and it's the Crowleys for Colchester. That's right, they are 8th in the table, 58 points for the season. They're just 1 defeat in the last 6. They're on a good bit of form right now, but coming into us on the back of that spanking victory by Bradford. Grimsby, though, under David Artell, they are 7th right now. What a game this is. Just 1 point separate the 2 sides. Grimsby, though, 2 defeats, 2 wins, and 2 draws in the last 6. That's, what do they call that? That's 50% form, of course. They played 17 times in 2003. 8 wins, Colchester, 5 wins, Grimsby, and there's been 4 draws in the last time they played over at this very venue. It was a 2-0 win for Colchester back in April 2024. Meanwhile, the reverse fixture, a 1-0 win for Colchester way back in November. That was in Grimsby. Colchester have actually won 4 on the spin against Grimsby, but they're on the back of that 4-1 loss with Grimsby on the back of that 1-0 win over Newport County. The bookies, though, for this, they will give it to Colchester. Our fancy for the victory here. I'm going with a 2-0 win as well for the Crowleys, and maybe, just maybe, they'll make it back into those playoffs at the expense, possibly, of the likes of Grimsby. Let's go to Tranmere now, up against Cheltenham. Of course, Tranmere still under the stewardship of Andrew Crosby, and we're looking for a coach, of course. Unbeaten the last 5. 22nd in the table, 37 points for the campaign. Up against Cheltenham under Michael Flynn, who are 14th in the table with 50 points for the season. Now, they played each other 18 times in 2003, 5 wins. Tranmere, 10 wins. Cheltenham. There's been 3 draws between the 2 sides. Last time around over at Tranmere, it was a 3-0 win for Cheltenham way back in September 2020. Goodness gracious me. However, they did play at Cheltenham back in November. It was a 1-0 win for Cheltenham as well. They've actually won 3 on the spin against Tranmere, and they haven't conceded a goal in that last 3, and they've scored 8 in those last 3 games combined. Tranmere, though, on the back of that 0-0 draw against Fleetwood. Of course, 1-0 winners, so back-to-back clean sheets for them. Of course, meanwhile, Cheltenham on the back of that 1-0 win, a 1-0 loss against MK Dons. Kicking on forward to the odds on this one. Let's have a look at it. What are we looking at here? They do think that Tranmere are favoured. They're on a good bit of run right now, Tranmere. They need some more points to escape the drop or escape any quandaries there. I'm going with a draw here. We'll see how that shapes up. Kicking on forward, let's get to Accrington Stanley now, up against Bradford City. Match over at Accrington. That's one of the early kickoffs on Saturday, the 29th of March. John Doolan's at Accrington currently find themselves 20 for the table, 41 points for the season. They're unbeaten in the last 3 matches, but just one defeat in the last 5 as well, opening up the floodgates. Bradford, though, under Graham Alexandra, who are second and could go top with a win this weekend. Won 4 out of the last 6, and they've played Stanley 21 times since 2004. 8 wins apiece and 5 draws, that's right. Last time around, over in Accrington was a 3-0 win for Bradford way back in March 2024. Earlier in the campaign, over at Vale Parade, it was a 1-0 win for Bradford back in February. Bradford are looking at, what are we looking at? 5 wins on the spin right now against Accrington. So they're making 6 on the bounce, of course, and they've actually got 3 clean sheets on the spin against them. Bradford, though, on the back of that 4-1 over Colchester. Accrington on the back of that 0-0 draw against Swindon Town. The odds right here, right now, they'll go with Bradford. Of course, they're flying high. I'm going to go with a 2-1 win as well, as Bradford could be back in the 3rd tier of English football at the end of the season. Looking good for them right now. Crewe, though, up against Port Vale. Bit of a Northwest crunch clash. Coming at you over in Crewe at Grimsby Road. Lee Bell's boys are 58% form. They're unbeaten, actually, in the last 3. Just 1 loss in the last 6. However, those last 3 matches have all been draws. They are 9th with 58 points for the season. Up against Port Vale under Darren Moore. They're on 58% form for them right now. Back-to-back wins for them. And, of course, they are just outside the top 3. They have played 34 times since 1997. 12 wins Crewe, 15 wins Port Vale, and there's been 7 draws, including the last time they played at Port Vale, which was the reverse fixture back in November 2024. This campaign, of course, it's at Crewe, and the last time they played at Crewe was a 1-0 win for Port Vale way back in November 2019. Goodness gracious me. Crewe, though, on the back of 3 successive draws, including draws against Salford, Doncaster, and Notts County, all heavyweights. Well, sort of heavyweights in this division. Meanwhile, Port Vale on the back of successive wins, but both of those games were at home. The odds for this one, though, we're looking at it. Crewe are, what are we looking at? Crewe are fancy for the victory here. I'm going there as well. 2-0 winners in the end. Get into the next one then. Barrow coming up against Chesterfield, also Northwest Crunch Clash. Coming at you over at Barrow. Andrew Wing's boys are 17th at the table, 45 points for the campaign. They're unbeaten the last 4, but they're on 50% form for them right now. 1-2 lost to and drawn 2 over the last 6. Chesterfield, though, under Paul Cook are 11th. Their season's kind of gone off a little bit, down to with just 52 points for this season. They're unbeaten in the last 4 as well, but picking up 3 wins and just 1 draw. So they're cooking at the moment. They're cooking with Cook. They played 4 times in 2018, 1 win apiece and 2 draws. The last time they played at Barrow was a 3-2 win for Barrow way back in August 2018. However, they did play this season at Chesterfield as a 1-0 win for Chesterfield way back in November. Barrow, though, on back of successive Desmond 2-2s. That's right. 2-2 draws against Morecambe and Wimbledon. Both of those games were on the road. Last time they were at home, though, they picked up a 2-0 win over Stanley. Meanwhile, of course, Chesterfield on the back of that 0-0 draw against Harrogate as a big point for them on the road, or at least a solid point for them on the road. Bookies odds for this one then, we are looking at Barrow. It's actually quite tight between the bookies. Of course, Chesterfield need a win, but I think they'll only get a draw in the end. Next up, it's Bromley up against Salford. That's right, coming at you over at Bromley. Andy Woman's boys are 12th at the table, 52 points for the season. However, winless in the last 3. Up against Salford and Carl Robinson. Just, what are we looking at here? 1 win the last 6. They're on a really shit bit of form right now. Down to 10th, of course, 53 points for the season. Just 1 point to separate the 2 sides. They have played 3 times since 2018. 2 wins for Salford, nothing for Bromley. And there's been 1 draw between these 2 sides. And that 1 draw was the reverse fixture. 3-3 thriller way back in February 2025. Now, the last time they played at Bromley was back in the National League. There's a 2-0 win for Salford. Salford, though, coming into us on the back of an away win. They're back on the road once again. Bromley, though, on the back of a 2-1 loss to Carlisle. The odds for this one is tight once again. Bromley edging it in the bookies' odds. I'm going with the 2-1 win as well. Meanwhile, Doncaster Rovers taking on Carlisle. The Keepmoat. It's not a derby. Doncaster under Grant McCann. Winless in the last 3. They're all the way down to 5th right now with 63 points for the season. Carlisle, though, under Sparky Hughes. Just 1 win in the last 4. They're down to 24th. Still rock bottom. It's been a miserable season for Carlisle. I think they just want to end it right now, but they could still make a great escape. They played Doncaster 15 times in 2003, 6 wins Doncaster, 7 wins Carlisle, and there's been 2 draws between the two sides. The last time they played over at Keepmoat, it was a 2-1 win for Doncaster way back on New Year's Day 2023. The reverse fixture, though, a 0-0 draw in Carlisle back in November. Carlisle, though, picking up a 2-1 win over Bromley. That was last time around. They taking on MK Dons on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Doncaster coming into on the back of that a draw against Crewe. Back-to-back draws for them. Their last victory was a 3-0 win over Newport County a couple of games back. The odds for this: Doncaster, red-hot favourites. Carlisle expected to get thumped. I'm going with the 2-0 win. In the end, meanwhile, Morecambe up against Swindon Town. That's right. Coming at you over at Morecambe. Derek Adams looks destined to be going down here with these boys. Just 1 win the last 6. They're 23 in the table. 30 points for the season. Up against Swindon and Ian Holloway, who've drawn 4 on the spin. They're unbeaten in at least the last 6 matches, and they've played at Morecambe 11 times since 2006. 1 win Morecambe, 7 wins Swindon. There's been 3 draws between the two sides. Last time around, of course, at Morecambe was a 2-2 draw way back in September 2023. The reverse fixture, a 3-2 win for Morecambe at Swindon back in November 2024. Morecambe are actually unbeaten against Swindon over the last 3. That's 1 win, though, and a couple of draws. Swindon, though, on the back of that 0-0 draw themselves against Accrington, Stanley, Morecambe. They're losing to Port Vale last time around. Swindon should be favourites on this one. They are. Morecambe expected to take an L. I'm going with the 2-1 win as well for Holloway's boys, who are cooking, but they just need to ramp it up a little bit. More wins, less draws. Harrogate Town up against it, against Gillingham, of course, over at Harrogate. Simon Weaver's boys are all the way down to 21st, but they're rocking 50% form for them right now. That's 1-2, lost 2, and drawn 2 over the last 6. Taking on Gillingham under John Coleman, also on 50% form. They're unbeaten in the last 3, just 1 defeat in the last 5. They're down to 19th with 43 points for the season. Now, they played 5 times since 2022, 3 wins Harrogate, 1 win Gillingham, and there's been 1 draw between the two sides. Last time around, over at Harrogate, it was a 5-1 win for the hosts way back in April 2024. The reverse fixture, a 2-1 win for Harrogate at Gillingham back in November. Gillingham on the back of that 0-0 draw against Walsall. It's actually been back-to-back draws, unbeaten in the last 3. Up against Harrogate on the back of that 0-0 draw against Chesterfield, but they've only scored 1 goal in the last 4 matches combined. The odds right here, right now, it is tight. Gillingham fancy for the victory on this one. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw for the night on that one. MK Dons up against Fleetwood Town, coming out to the stadium. MK, Ben Glavin still the caretaker coach over there at MK. They've won 2 and lost 1 over the last 3. Of course, they're down to 18th right now. Miserable season as well for MK Dons. Up against Fleetwood under Pete Wilder, doing all right. They're down to 13th right now, but just 1 defeat in the last 6. They've only won once, though, in the last 5. And they played MK Dons 14 times in 2014. 5 wins apiece and 4 draws. Last time around, of course, over at MK Dons, it was a 2-1 win for Fleetwood back in December 2022. That was in League 1. Meanwhile, the reverse fixture at Highbury was a 2-1 win for Fleetwood back in 21st of January. Fleetwood are on the back of a 0-0 draw against Tranmere. They've only got back-to-back games without a goal for them. MK Dons are on the back of that 1-0 win over Cheltenham. The odds right here, right now, it is again tight one. This one could go either way. I'm going with the 2-1 win for MK Dons, who could have a new coach when this game comes around. And don't forget, MK Dons double match week for them, Carlisle and then Fleetwood. So it could be a good 6-point haul in the end. And then kicking on forward, it is over to Wales. It's Newport County up against Notts County coming at you. Of course, Nelson Jardam's boys are 16th in the table, 46 points for the season. They've only won twice in the last 6 up against Notts County, and Stuart Maynard just 1 win in the last 6, and they are sitting in 6th. That's right. Played 11 times since 2015. 4 win Newport, 5 wins Notts County, 2 draws between the two sides, including a draw last round at Notts County, the reverse fixture back in November. Meanwhile, the last time they played in Wales, it was a 3-1 win for Notts County back in February. The Welshies are on the back of that 1-0 loss to Grimsby. Notts County on the back of that 0-0 draw against Crewe. Their last victory was an away day trip to Grimsby. Actually, it was the last away match for Notts County was a victory. The odds right here, right now, Notts County red-hot favourites for the victory here. I'm going there. 2-0 winners despite the form book. A big 3-pointer in the end. And then finally, it's the Walsall. It is Wimbledon. Ding-dong classic. It is first. It is third. Matt Sadler's boys are tip at the top of the table, but they are winless in the last 6. Goodness gracious me. Drawn 4 of that last 6. Up against Wimbledon on Johnny Jackson, they are third. Just 1 defeat in the last 4. They played Walsall 11 times since 2016. 5 wins Walsall, 6 wins Wimbledon. There's been no draws. That must be a draw then, surely. Last time they played, of course, at Westcott was a 3-1 win for Wimbledon back in September 2023. The reverse fixture at Plough Lane or Cherry Records Road or whatever you call it. 1-0 win as it was for Walsall way back in November. Walsall on the back of that 0-0 draw against Gillingham. Back-to-back draws. The Dons also on the back of a draw themselves, drawing with Barrow at home. The odds for this one, they go with Walsall. They are favourites. But of course, it could have a major major change of the table as well. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, sitting on the fence as the big boys duke it out to a draw. If I'm right, which I think I should be, this is what the table will look like at the end of the campaign, or at the end of this weekend. It is Bradford, it is Walsall, it is Doncaster. They're going to League One right now. Wimbledon, Notts County, Port Vale and Colchester will be duking it out into the playoffs. Going down, it is Carlisle, it is Morecambe. It's an 8-point gap between safety and relegation. That's, of course, what's ahead. Make sure you smash your subscribe, smash the like. We'll see you soon on the end. Until then, we're done.